The rain poured down hard that night, as if the sky itself was crying with her. The lights of the mansion still glowed behind her, but to her, everything there had gone dark forever. The echo of her family's shouts still rang in her ears, cold, cutting words she could never forget. "You don't belong in this house anymore. Don't count on us. You're on your own from now on." There were no hugs, no compassion. Only hardened faces and eyes filled with contempt, as if she were a burden finally thrown away. And there she was, barefoot, clothes soaked, clutching a small suitcase that felt heavier than her own body. She had nowhere to go, not a single true friend to call. Everyone had turned their back on her. What she didn't know was that, just a few steps away, someone was watching. A man with a steady, almost unreadable gaze, leaning against a black car. His eyes, as dark as the night, followed her every uncertain step. He wasn't a stranger, far from it. He was the man who, years ago, had sworn never to go near her again. The man who had promised himself that, if it were up to him, she would never know peace. And now, he was here. Watching her fall apart. But why? What was he doing there, witnessing her downfall? Had he come just to see for himself that she had finally lost everything? Or, was there another reason, one he couldn't even admit to himself? The silence between them stretched for what felt like forever. She, lost in her thoughts, didn't even notice she was being watched. He, frozen in place, fought an internal war, to turn his back and let her sink, or to break his own pride and reach out his hand. A distant rumble of thunder split the air. She stumbled on the wet pavement, nearly falling. That was when, instinctively, he took a step forward. In that moment, 2 lives would change forever. The woman betrayed by her own family, stripped of the last shred of her dignity, and the man who had sworn to hate her, yet was somehow about to become her only salvation. And this is their story. Before that rainy night, before being thrown out as if she were nothing, Isabella was the kind of person who believed in the best in people. She grew up hearing that family was a safe harbor, that blood ties were unbreakable, and that no matter what happened, they would always be by her side. The youngest of 3 siblings, Isabella had never been the favorite. Her mother, a woman with an austere expression, always seemed to keep a critical eye on her every move. Her father, quiet and methodical, saw her as a burden, someone who, according to him, needed to learn how to be more useful to the family name. Still, she tried. She studied, worked small jobs, helped with house chores, and always volunteered to support her family's projects, even when it meant giving up her own dreams. There was one thing few people knew: Isabella dreamed of becoming a photographer. For her, each click of the camera was a way to capture feelings, to eternalize moments she secretly feared losing. Many times, she would spend hours watching the afternoon light filter through the window, imagining the life she could have if she had the freedom to live it. But the house she lived in was not a home, it was a testing ground. Every gesture felt like an exam, every word, a trap. Her older, competitive siblings found joy in belittling her. They used jokes, sarcastic remarks, and always reinforced the idea that she was too weak to face the world alone. And still, Isabella believed them. Maybe because she needed to. Maybe because, deep down, it was too painful to accept that the love she felt wasn't returned. The final blow began forming long before the storm that night. Small signs appeared like heavy clouds on the horizon, conversations that stopped when she entered the room, knowing glances exchanged between relatives, documents mysteriously disappearing from her drawer. She tried to ignore it. Preferred to think it was paranoia. But little by little, she realized it wasn't her imagination. Her family, the very people who should protect her, were preparing something. And it wasn't for her benefit. What Isabella didn't yet know was that, while she still believed things could get better, her fate was already being decided in meetings and conversations she would never be part of. And worse, there was someone outside her family, someone whose story was filled with resentment and old wounds, who was also about to step into this game. That man was no stranger. He was Leonardo Vargas, and between them was a past so scarred that it seemed impossible to imagine he could one day be the only one to reach out his hand to her. But that is something we are yet to discover. Betrayal rarely starts with a direct blow. It slips in quietly, almost invisibly, until, by the time you notice, you're already surrounded. For Isabella, it began with small changes in her family's behavior, so subtle that, at first, she ignored them. First came the disguised exclusions. Family gatherings she was forgotten to be told about, important decisions made without her presence. The excuse was always the same: we thought you were busy. Then came the looks. Not neutral looks, but ones heavy with judgment. It was as if, suddenly, every move she made was under suspicion, as if everyone was just waiting for her to make a mistake so they could point the finger. One day, arriving home from work earlier than usual, Isabella heard voices coming from the dining room. She recognized her mother's laugh, followed by whispered phrases not meant for her ears: she'll never notice. Leave it to me. On the right day, she won't have a choice. Her blood ran cold. She froze behind the door, too afraid to walk in. It could have been about anything, but deep down, a persistent voice told her it was about her. The days that followed confirmed her suspicions. Important documents she kept went missing without explanation. Her access to the joint bank account with her father was suddenly blocked. When she asked why, she only got vague answers: must be a bank error. We'll fix it later. But nothing was ever fixed. Things got worse when one of her brothers, Marcelo, showed up with a contract he said she needed to sign to solve a family problem. The document was long, filled with confusing legal terms. Isabella hesitated. Just sign it already, it's nothing big, he said, impatiently. She didn't sign that day. She kept the paper, deciding she would ask someone she trusted for advice. That's when she realized she was completely isolated. Friends began to distance themselves without explanation, invitations disappeared. And even her coworkers started looking at her differently. Later, she would find out that rumors about her were being spread, and ironically, they were coming from inside her own house. The atmosphere became suffocating. It was like living in enemy territory, where every word and every action could be used against you. And while Isabella tried to figure out what was happening, her family already had everything prepared for the final strike. She didn't know it yet, but the right day her mother had mentioned was getting closer. And when it came, there would be no turning back. The announcement came in a blunt family group message: meeting today. 8 p.m. Main room. Serious matter. It wasn't an invitation, it was a summons. Isabella spent the entire day with her stomach in knots, trying to guess what was waiting for her. When she arrived at 7:58, the room was already full. Her mother in the center, posture rigid. Her father on the left, holding a black folder. Her brothers spread out on the sofas, each with a look that mixed impatience and satisfaction. Sit, her mother said, no good evening. Isabella obeyed. Her father opened the folder and pulled out a set of stapled papers. The sound of metal scraping against plastic felt too loud for a house that had always been silent around her. We've reached the limit, her father began, voice low and calculated. There are decisions we must make to protect this family name. The word protect hit like a punch. Protect from what? From her. Marcelo, her brother, was the first to move, placing on the table the same contract he had tried to push on Isabella weeks earlier. But now, alongside the contract, there were printed bank statements, screenshots, and a letter on a law firm's letterhead. You took money from the company's account, he said, savoring each word. Small transfers, 4 months. Always the day after meetings. Isabella felt the ground shift beneath her feet. That's a lie, she replied, voice trembling. I haven't had access to that account since you changed the passwords. You know that. Her mother tilted her head, as if looking at an insect. We have evidence you used the old login, before the audit, she said. And more, you've been looking for lawyers, haven't you? Isabella blinked, confused, until she remembered she had sent an email to a contact asking for advice about that very contract. Her attempt to be cautious was now proof of guilt. I just asked for guidance about a document you gave me. That's all. Her father slammed the folder on the table. You signed it. The paper slid toward her. Her signature was there. Perfect. Identical. A copy drawn with patience and malice. "This is forged," she whispered, her throat burning. "I didn't sign this." Of course, her sister scoffed, arms crossed. Always the victim. Always the poor thing who never knows anything. Her mother raised her voice, cutting the air. "You embarrassed us. Turned our trust into a joke. Spread rumors, tried to divide us, sought lawyers against your own family. And now you want to play innocent?" Isabella looked at each face, searching for a flicker of doubt, a scrap of love. Nothing. Only a cruel consensus. In that moment, she understood, this wasn't a trial, it was an execution. The verdict had been decided long before she walked in. "Let's get to the point," her father said, pulling out another document. "From today on, you are removed from any role in the company and forbidden to use the family name in your projects. Your cards are blocked. Your things will be packed by tomorrow. And, you must leave the house today." The last sentence fell like a silent thunderclap. "Today," she repeated, stunned. "You're throwing me out, today?" "We won't repeat ourselves," her mother said. "We've already wasted too much time." She tried to say "I'm your daughter," but the words didn't come. Because in that instant, she realized that daughter was just an administrative term. The family who should have protected her had chosen to protect a name, a fortune, an image. And for that, she was disposable. From the hallway, a housemaid entered with a suitcase, Isabella's things, hastily folded. Intimacy reduced to luggage, affections crushed between zippers. "You planned everything," she said at last, with a calm that surprised even herself. "The contract, the passwords, the rumors, the signature. Everything." "Don't make us call someone to escort you out," her mother replied, reading from a script. Her father gestured toward the glass door at the front of the house, the same door where, for years, she had watched others arrive and be welcomed with open arms. For her, only the silent exit remained. Isabella stood. The weight of the suitcase pulled down a lifetime of memories. Each step toward the door was a farewell to what she had once believed was real. At the handle, she stopped. If she looked back, she would beg. So she didn't. Night fell over her like a rough blanket. The rain was picking up, the wind carried that metallic scent of a coming storm. The living room lights still on. Shadows moving inside, life continuing as if nothing had happened. She took 2 steps and tripped on the uneven garden path. The suitcase fell, spilling a blouse, a photo, a cracked picture frame. The image landed face up, her, as a child, in her father's arms, laughing with her mouth wide open. The contrast between the wet paper and the dry present was too cruel. She knelt, shoving the items back quickly, sniffing hard to hold back the tears. That's when she felt it. Not a touch, a gaze. One heavy enough to cut through the storm. She turned slowly and saw, across the street, a black car parked under the shadow of a tree. Headlights off, but its outline visible. A man standing beside the door, arms crossed. As if watching a scene he already knew the ending to. Her heart raced. She recognized that posture, a ghost she had sworn never to see again, Leonardo Vargas. He didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stared, as if fighting something too big to fit in his chest. The old hatred was there, clear in the clenched jaw, in the hard gaze. But beneath it, something else was breaking through, the hesitation of a man who knew that if he took one step, he'd never be the same again. A thunderclap cracked nearby. Isabella gripped the suitcase, lifted her chin, and took another step into the unknown. That's when his car door opened with a sharp click that split the night. The trigger wasn't just her expulsion. It was the exact moment when 2 opposite decisions collided, the family that chose to abandon her. And the man who had sworn to hate her, now on the verge of breaking his own vow. Cut. Fade to black. Breathe. Her world had ended. And, strangely enough, this is where the story begins. The sound of the car door opening was so unexpected that Isabella froze. Rain streamed down her face, blending with the tears she was still trying to hide. Leonardo Vargas stepped out slowly, not like a man in a hurry, but like someone who needed a few extra seconds to decide if he was doing the right thing. He was exactly as she remembered, tall, perfect posture, the black suit tailored like a second skin. But there was something new, a colder, harder edge, as if time had sharpened the corners of a man who was already difficult to approach. "You, okay?" The question came out flat, almost mechanical, as if concern was a language he didn't speak fluently. Isabella blinked, confused. She hadn't expected him to speak, let alone say something that sounded like concern. "What are you doing here?" she asked back, her voice trembling but laced with caution. Leonardo took a few steps, stopping just a couple of meters from her. His gaze was sharp enough to slice through the silence between them. "I could ask you the same thing," he said. Then, in a lower tone, "but I think I have already seen enough to know the answer." Amor Emu, her chest tightened. The last time they had been face to face had been anything but friendly. He had made it brutally clear that he didn't trust her and would never get involved in her life again. And it wasn't some shallow falling out, it was deeper, a past they both carried like an open scar. Flashback. 2 years earlier, Isabella had been an unwilling pawn in a scandal that nearly destroyed Leonardo's company. Confidential documents were leaked, million-dollar contracts collapsed, and he, with the cold precision of a businessman, didn't hesitate to believe she was behind it all. There had been no room for explanations. Only his verdict. "Stay away from me. And if you ever need help, pray I'm not your only option." And now, ironically, that was exactly what was happening. "I don't need your help," she said, gripping the suitcase handle tighter, as if it were a shield. "Doesn't look like it," he replied, with a half-smile that never reached his eyes. The rain grew heavier, the cold wind lashing both their faces. Leonardo took another step forward. "You can take it or leave it at Isabella, but I'm not letting you walk down this street alone tonight." She took a deep breath. Instinct told her to refuse. Pride told her to turn her back. But there was one detail she couldn't ignore. After everything, after all the resentment, he was still here. And that made no sense at all. "Why are you doing this?" The question slipped out almost like a plea, not because she wanted the answer, but because she needed to know if it was real. Leonardo hesitated. For a moment, his eyes softened, but then they returned to their usual state, unreadable. "Maybe, because someone has to. And from the looks of it, no one else will." The silence that followed was heavy. Isabella didn't attempt to know if this was a genuine gesture. Or some invisible debt he felt the need to repay. But somehow, she knew this meeting wasn't a coincidence. He extended his hand. Not like someone offering help, but like someone proposing a pact. She looked at his hand, then at his face, and in that instant, she understood, accepting didn't just mean getting out of the rain. It meant opening the door to a past she wasn't sure she was ready to revisit. But surrounded by darkness, with her family's house now nothing more than a shadow behind her, Isabella made her choice. And without realizing it, that choice would change everything. The hand between them felt impossibly heavy. It wasn't just a simple gesture, it was a dangerous invitation, and a reminder of everything they had already lost with each other. Isabella hesitated. Pride told her to refuse. Anger replayed the words he had thrown at her in the past. But the cold wind, the rain soaking her to the bone. And the hollow silence of the street tightened the knot in her throat. Leonardo didn't move. He didn't rush her. He didn't insist. He simply waited, like a seasoned player who knew the next move had to be hers. Finally, Isabella let the suitcase slip from her hand onto the wet ground and touched the tips of his fingers. That was enough for him to pull her toward him in a firm, almost abrupt motion, but without violence. "Let's go," he said, without looking back. He led her to the car, opened the passenger door, and waited for her to get in. Inside, the warm air carried the scent of leather and a woody cologne. When the door closed, a shiver ran through her, not from the cold, but from the sudden feeling of being safe and trapped at the same time. Leonardo walked around, got in, and started the engine. The interior lights briefly lit his face, revealing a tense, focused expression, as if he was calculating every move. Seatbelt. His voice was low, but commanding. She obeyed. The car moved forward, cutting through the rain-slicked streets. Neither of them spoke for the first few minutes, the only sounds were the tires on wet asphalt and the rhythmic sweep of the wipers. "Are you going to tell me where we're going?" she finally asked, breaking the silence. Leonardo kept his eyes on the road. "To a place where you can spend the night." "That's it?" Her tone was suspicious. "That's it, for now." The pause before "for now" was heavy with something she couldn't quite read. The car stopped in front of a tall building with a mirrored facade, clearly expensive, with uniformed doormen and elegant lighting. This wasn't just a hotel, it was one of the luxury properties owned by his family. When the doorman approached, Leonardo stepped out first, giving quick instructions without leaving room for questions. Then he returned to open her door, a formal gesture that clashed with their history of hostility. Inside the lobby, the warmth and quiet were a stark contrast to the storm outside. Leonardo handed over documents at the front desk, received a keycard, and, without asking her opinion, escorted her to the elevator. In the elevator, the silence returned, but it was heavier now, charged. "You didn't have to do this," she said, trying to cut through the tension. "Yes, I did," he replied, with the conviction of someone not open to debate. When they reached the room, he opened the door and let her step inside first. It was spacious, warm, with a large window overlooking the rain-soaked city. By the bed, a neatly arranged set of towels and a robe waited, as if everything had been prepared in advance. "Stay here tonight. Tomorrow, we'll see," Leonardo said, standing by the door. "And why are you helping me?" she pressed. He took a deep breath, glanced toward the window, and said, "Because, even after everything, I can't watch you like this." Before she could respond, he turned and left, closing the door with a soft click. Isabella stood there, alone, hearing only the distant rain. She didn't know if she should feel grateful, suspicious, or afraid. But one thing was certain, this wouldn't be the last time she saw Leonardo standing at that door. The night in the hotel room was long. Isabella couldn't sleep for more than a few minutes at a time. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her family's faces, the contempt in their eyes, the cold bite of their words, the suitcase dropped at her feet as if she were carrying trash. But there was another image she couldn't shake, Leonardo standing at the door, saying, "I can't watch you like this." That simple sentence echoed louder than she wanted to admit. By dawn, pale light seeped through the curtains, making it painfully clear that the world outside carried on as usual while her life had been turned upside down. She went down for breakfast, expecting Leonardo to be long gone. But he was there, sitting alone at a table in the corner, reading something on his phone. "Did you sleep?" he asked, without looking up. "Not much," she replied, sitting down. "Figured." The conversation was short, but his presence felt strangely solid. When they finished, he led her back to the car again, without saying where they were going. The family's first reaction hours later, Isabella found out that Leonardo's help had already reached her family's ears. It didn't take long for the messages to start flooding her phone, all carrying the same poisonous tone, "We know where you are. Hiding behind him now? Hope you're ready to face the consequences." What had once been pure contempt had now turned into something sharper, fear and anger. The family knew that if Leonardo stood by her side, he could protect her in ways they couldn't stop. The weight of public image. Leonardo wasn't immune to the fallout either. The moment he walked into the lobby of one of his company's buildings with Isabella, he noticed the curious glances and whispered conversations. His name carried weight, and scandals were like gasoline near an open flame. In the car, he was blunt, "You need to understand. I can't be seen as going against your family without a reason. That will cost me." Isabella turned to him, disbelief in her eyes. "Then why are you doing this?" "I'm still trying to figure that out," he said, in that tone that always hid more than it revealed. First steps in a new reality. Leonardo quickly moved into action. He put a private lawyer at her disposal, ordered an investigation into the forged signature, and arranged for Isabella to have a safe place to live, far from her family's reach. But along with those actions came one non-negotiable rule: you follow my instructions. No disappearing, no trying to fix this on your own. Isabella hesitated. Trusting him was dangerous. But with no resources, no allies, and a family set on destroying her reputation, she knew she had no other choice. The shadow of the past, the more time they spent together, the more their long glances and heavy silences spoke louder than words. But along with that came the resurfacing of old wounds. Leonardo still hadn't apologized for what happened 2 years ago. And she, even though she needed him now, couldn't forget how quickly he had turned his back when she needed him most. It was a fragile balance. One wrong step could turn this unlikely alliance into open war. And her family, on the outside, was already moving to make sure that happened. The first days were a minefield. Leonardo kept his usual demeanor, controlled, direct, avoiding any conversation that went beyond the strictly necessary. Isabella, on the other hand, tried to keep her emotional distance, answering only when needed. But living under the same roof has a way of wearing down even the strongest walls, and slowly, cracks began to form. Small gestures, heavy silences. At first, the gestures were barely noticeable. He would leave coffee ready before heading out. Place an umbrella by the door on rainy days. Arrange, without her asking, for the delivery of new clothes, probably to replace the ones she had to abandon the night she was thrown out. Isabella never thanked him out loud. But each gesture carved itself into her memory, challenging the image she held of him as a cold, ruthless man. Conversations that shouldn't happen one night, while they were reviewing documents for the lawyer, Isabella blurted out, almost without thinking, "Do you still think I betrayed you?" The air suddenly felt heavier. Leonardo closed the folder slowly, leaned his elbows on the table, and looked her straight in the eye. "I don't know what to think anymore." "Then why are you helping me?" she shot back, a mix of anger and curiosity in her voice. He hesitated. "Because, maybe I want to find out if I was wrong." That short, simple confession echoed in her mind for hours. The weight of the past between them, the past was like a third character in their story, always there, even when it wasn't mentioned. Any moment of closeness was quickly broken by memories of what had happened. For Leonardo, trusting her meant admitting he might have judged her unfairly. For Isabella, accepting his help meant facing the fact that, deep down, she still cared about his opinion. First cracks in the hatred one afternoon, as they were leaving a meeting with the lawyer. A car ran a red light and nearly hit Isabella on the sidewalk. Leonardo grabbed her, pulling her against his chest and holding her longer than necessary. Her heart raced, and not just from the scare. As they stepped apart, they exchanged a quick look, charged with something neither of them could name. The family strikes from another angle. Meanwhile, Isabella's family shifted tactics. If they couldn't separate her from him with direct threats, they would do it by planting doubt. Rumors began to spread that Leonardo had hidden motives, that he planned to use her against them, that his help was nothing more than a power game. Isabella tried to ignore it, but the seeds of doubt were skillfully planted. And Leonardo, even noticing, made no effort to explain his true reasons, maybe because he didn't fully understand them himself. The dilemma, the closeness between them was becoming inevitable. But the dilemma remained for both, trust, and risk getting hurt again. Or keep their distance, and lose the only alliance that could save them. And deep down, they knew they wouldn't have much time to decide. Tension had been in the air for days. Leonardo noticed the way Isabella sometimes looked at him, as if trying to figure out whether he was an ally or a threat. And she could feel that he was hiding something, not out of malice, but because he wasn't ready to say it. That barrier began to crack on a rainy night, when Leonardo's private lawyer asked them both to meet. The room was lit only by a table lamp, casting long shadows across the walls. On the table, a stack of documents waited. "We have news," the lawyer said, adjusting his glasses. "And it's not small." He slid a brown envelope toward Isabella. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside were copies of bank records, email exchanges, and a contract, exactly like the one her family had used to accuse her. But there was something more, dates, times, and signatures proving she had been somewhere else at the moment of the supposed signing. "This clears me," she whispered, her heartbeat quickening. The lawyer nodded. "Yes. And it goes beyond that. We traced where the forgery came from. Leonardo, his expression grave, spoke up. It was your brother, Marcello. He used an employee's login to access the files and alter them. The world tilted for Isabella. The betrayal had a name, a face, and a motive. And worse, it was tied to something much bigger. Why would he do this? She asked, almost breathless. The lawyer exchanged a quick look with Leonardo. It was Leonardo who answered, because he needed to get rid of you to close a deal, with me. Silence fell like a sharp blade. What do you mean, with you? Her voice hardened. Leonardo took a deep breath, placing his hands on the table. Before all this, I was negotiating with your brother to merge my chain with your family's company. He wanted more control, and he paused, choosing his words carefully, I didn't want you in the way. The pieces fit together in the cruelest way. In the past, Leonardo had indeed had reasons to push her away. But now, ironically, he was the same man exposing the truth that could destroy everyone's plans. So, you knew from the start there was a deal with him, she asked, her voice cracking. I knew. But I didn't know he would go this far. When I realized what they were doing, I couldn't just stand by. His words were sincere, but they didn't soften the blow. Isabella felt a storm of emotions, relief at having her innocence proven, anger at discovering it was all connected to a power game that, deep down, had started because of him. The lawyer broke the silence. Now we have proof to crush the accusation and file a case against them. But you need to decide quickly. Once this goes public, there's no turning back. Leonardo looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, there was vulnerability in his eyes. If you want, we can end it all. But that means your family will fall, completely. Isabella didn't answer right away. Her heart was torn between the thirst for justice and the weight of destroying her own blood. And in that room, she realized, the choice wasn't just about revenge. It was about who she wanted to be when it was all over. The clock on the wall was close to midnight when Isabella finally spoke. Her voice was steady, but there was a heavy shadow in her eyes. I've lost a lot in this mess. Maybe more than anyone could imagine. But if I stay silent now, I'm saying they can do this to anyone. Leonardo didn't move. He just watched her, as if this was the answer he'd been expecting, but one that still left him uneasy. Then we go all the way, he said, a sentence that sounded as much like a promise as it did a verdict. The days that followed were a storm. The lawsuit against her family went public, headlines splashed the proof of the forgery, and the reputation they had fought so hard to protect began to crumble. People who had once treated Isabella as invisible now looked at her with a mix of respect and fear. But victory didn't bring instant peace. Seeing her mother, father, and even her brothers facing public exposure was painful. Not because they deserved pity, but because, deep down, they were still the same people she had once tried to love all her life. On the night it all ended, Isabella stood on the balcony of the apartment Leonardo had arranged for her. The city stretched before her, bright, alive, indifferent to the war she had just won. Leonardo appeared behind her, silent, placing a warm cup of tea in her hand. And now, he asked. She took her time to answer. She looked at the horizon, took a deep breath, and said, now. I learned to live for me. Without them. Without fear. He stayed beside her, not trying to fill the silence. For the first time, there was no wall of the past between them, only new ground. Uncertain, but free. Isabella knew their story wasn't over. Maybe it never would be. But in that moment, for the first time in a long time, she felt she had control over her own destiny. And for someone who had been betrayed by her own family, and saved by the man who once swore to hate her, that was already a beginning. Narrator pause, direct look into the camera in the video. Narrator, and you? In her place, would you have the courage to destroy your own family to clear your name? Or would you choose silence, even if it meant living with injustice?
Hey, did you like this story? Then hit subscribe to Between Lies and Love so you won't miss the next chapters. Don't forget to like this video. It really helps us bring you more emotional, anime-style K-drama stories. And I want to know, What was your favorite part of this story? What do you think we could do better in the next episodes? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and your idea might even show up in the next video. So subscribe, like, comment, and join this family that loves drama, twists, and unforgettable stories.